Welcome back to the Great Primeval Show. I am the Ark Minister, and I'm joined by Ancient Realms and Hodgepodge. Today we'll be breaking down Episode 2 of Primeval Series 3, also known as Haunted House in North America,
Spurlos verschwunden,
in Germany, and
Prédiction
in France, directed by Cilla Ware and written by James Moran. Speaking of the writer, he has written a blog post describing the writing process of this episode. What's interesting is that this episode was originally going to be the third, and the actual episode 3 was the second. Because of all the production changes with Series 3, this episode went through 4 main drafts by James Moran and a final draft by Adrian Hodges. Pause the video now to read what happens in each draft, but we shall mention anything relevant later in the video.
We open with a shot of an old house against an overcast and ominous sky. The house has been digitally altered to appear desolate before the camera whips around to reveal the house, and the weather is more vibrant to show the time contrast, though you can tell it's filmed at the same time because the trees look the same. 3 boys walk towards the house with much happier music. These characters are Ryan, Patrick and Matt. Why they decide to break into this house is unknown, because at this point the house does not seem vacant. It seemingly is lived in by the Brooks family, as we see family photos and a stocked fridge. Where the family actually is another question. Could it be that they were victims of a creature incursion? Patrick and Matt go upstairs to have fun, leaving Ryan downstairs. This shot from inside the fridge is used again later on in the episode. Something runs past the camera while Ryan is busy in the fridge. As he goes to get some milk, screams suddenly echo from the other 2 boys upstairs, making Ryan drop the glass, which shatters to the floor dramatically. The chilling screams are suddenly silenced as if cut off by something. Also interesting to note that the stereo conveniently stops playing when this happens. There's a lot of noise happening upstairs. What is the creature doing? If you look closely, you can also see the telltale flickering light of an anomaly. Either Ryan loses his footing or the entity pushes him as he falls off the stairs and watches as sounds clatter around him, yet nothing can be seen. The camera suddenly focuses on the sofa as Ryan spots a strange, obscured shape hunkered on it. Suddenly, the thing turns to reveal its face and snarls. What a face. Whoa, look at that cake! Before literally anything is explained, we cut to titles. The Brooks house was filmed at Ayot House on Doyley Cart Island in Surrey.
The titles for this episode are unique. It's virtually the same as episode 1 and 3, but with one small addition. Jason Fleming's name is added just before Ben Miller's, and the With Juliet Aubrey text has been moved slightly forward. The Ark logo appears turquoise here, for some reason. Also, why is this shot of the ops room so damn dark? How does anyone see in there? Sarah mentions the mythological creature, the Killin. In reference to horror movies, Connor's shirt has the silhouette from A Clockwork Orange by Stanley Kubrick.
I made a rough calculation and put it into the Matrix.
When we see Cutter's Matrix, you can also hear a rendition of the Mystery of the Anomalies theme from Series 1 and 2. Connor attempts to alter the future, but is told off by Cutter.
Whoa! Please tell me this all means something.
The fact that Jenny hasn't seen the Matrix yet, not that one, implies that Cutter put it together fairly quickly between episodes.
That's the saddest thing I've seen since Matrix Revolutions.
Connor mentions that this Matrix includes all known anomalies. This is true as we can see notes identifying past creatures. These are Future Bird / Patrick Hammock from Shadow of the Jaguar, Giant Spiders, Carboniferous from Series 1 Episode 2, The Future Shark from Series 2 Episode 4, Giant Scorpions, Silurian from Series 2 Episode 5, Entelodont, Oligocene from Extinction Event, Columbian Mammoth from Series 2 Episode 6, Worm, Precambrian from Series 2 Episode 2, and Smilodon, Pleistocene from Series 2 Episode 3. Additionally, there are some creatures that haven't yet been encountered. These are Titanus and Utahraptor, Early Cretaceous. This may be referring to the raptors from Series 2. Ironically, both these creatures later appear in Episode 6 of this series, and the New World, respectively. There's also a random top right one in red. Sarah also mentions the Loch Ness Monster as another cryptid based on a creature from the Anomalies.
The government, they took the body away and they covered the whole thing up.
Jenny inquires about putting this matrix on the computer. Good idea should anything bad happen to this place. Cutter announces that he's predicted a new anomaly, somehow, without knowing what the creature is or what mythological creature it may have inspired. Just before, we get another piano riff from Series 1. The scene then weirdly cuts from Cutter's lab to the ops room. Cutter again announces the new anomaly, and then jokingly calls Connor and Abby Sid and Nancy, after punk rock star Sid Vicious and his girlfriend Nancy Spungen. Also, keep these names in mind for later. You can also hear a bit of music from Series 2 here. Sarah asks if she can go along, but is sidelined by the plot. Becca also offers to go, but Jenny says no after seeing Cutter's reaction. Because why would you ever want the Special Forces out in the field to protect civilians? Perhaps Cutter didn't want him there because he's a trigger-happy soldier who would shoot first and ask questions later if there was a creature. We get music from Series 1 as the team leaves for the anomaly site, and Sarah meanwhile is quote-unquote
taken hostage by an obsessive scientist.
The anomaly is supposed to be within the house, known as the Brooks house. And it's weird how the team arrives in two separate vehicles here, seeing how it's only Connor, Abby and Jenny. In the first draft of this episode, it was Cutter, Abby and Jenny investigating. Connor was stuck back at the Ark, repairing damage caused by Helen's bomb. The house appears empty, but is also spooky, so it's pretty obvious this is a haunted house episode, which is really weird as it kind of goes against what Adrian Hodges said back in the behind the scenes of Series 1.
We didn't want spooky old churches or ghostly houses and things. We wanted something that felt really, really modern.
So clearly a change of direction was made by the time this episode was conceived.
Hold me back. I don't think I can take the excitement.
If you look closely, you can see a dog running away from the house. Perhaps it knows what dwells inside. Connor plays with the wind chimes, which the writer claims is a reference to another horror movie. Jenny oddly rings the doorbell, which probably alerts what's ever inside to intruders. We get a POV of something approaching the door before Connor jump scare. Once inside, Abby correctly guesses that the smell inside the house is made from animals.
Kind of animals. Skunks.
Abby picks up on Jenny's vibes about Cutter, and she discusses her thoughts. It's openly parallel that the two both have male love interests that they are hesitant to make the first move with.
You going to take your own advice?
Thinking about it.
We get a hint at Abby's feelings towards a certain temple, which we'll see come to a head later in the series. This shot of Connor opening the fridge the same way Ryan Mason did in the opening is a nice callback. Jenny examines the crime scene tape, yet seems to just dismiss it. You'd think she'd look into the matter. Abby finds herself in an open and well-lit room, which delights her quite a lot. The music which plays here is also very light and happy to reflect the emotions of her character right now. Connor meanwhile gets a call from someone. We never find out who's calling him, so maybe this is a dropped plotline. Before he has a chance to respond, he hears a scream coming from Abby. The music which plays here is also in Series 1, Episode 3 in the Cretaceous. Connor enters the room and finds it's empty, but also sees some dust coming from the fireplace. Before he can investigate, however, Abby mounts Connor for some reason. Is this really the most productive and professional thing you can be doing at this moment, Abby?
Stuff professionalism.
In fact, Abby acts much more immature in Series 3. Whilst she was never the most mature character, she was never this childish. Maybe living with Connor has rubbed off on her. Interestingly, in the first draft, it was actually Connor going around asking everyone how to ask Abby out on a date, whereas here, the roles have been swapped, so Abby is being more proactive. After the pair leave the room, the camera then shoots up the shaft to reveal a small creature, which looks straight into the camera. Ugh.
Does anyone else think the music here kind of sounds reminiscent of sea monsters? We see the British Library as Sarah departs with vital information regarding myths and legends when...
Oh, I'm sorry.
Interesting that Helen chose to target the newest ARC member, since she doesn't know her. Presumably the ARC hasn't informed Sarah regarding Helen and her shenanigans, because why would they get her up to speed on Cutter's estranged psychopathic wife? Helen is doing her best to act as a normal human by helping, the only time in this series she actually helps someone. If you pause, you can see this paper is about the Jersey Devil, which was also mentioned in Primeval Evolved Week 1. They briefly discussed the Killin, the Chinese unicorn.
The Killin.
As Sarah is gathering her things, Helen slides into her pocket and swipes her ARC ID, meaning she has been watching Sarah long enough to know where she keeps her card. Very sneaky. Also note that even in civilian clothes, Helen is still wearing khaki. This establishing shot of the house has Abby crossing the bridge when she is meant to be inside.
You care to explain what you're doing here?
As the team departs the house, we are introduced to yet another main character for this series and beyond, Danny Quinn, a detective who seems to have some strong feelings regarding the house as he acts quite hostile towards the trio on their first meeting. In the original script, Danny was called Emmett and was just a one-off character, before getting more development in later drafts. Jenny tries to confidently deal with the situation, but Danny is having none of it.
Well, I'm pretty sure I've seen Laughing Boy and I want to post a yak.
Ironically, Connor and Abby will later have missing persons posters, seen in the promos for Series 4.
We're property developers.
You're lying.
Danny immediately calls out Jenny's bluff, showing his intelligence, likely from his experience of dealing with criminals. The team moves to leave, but Connor's curiosity gets the better of him and asks,
What do you mean, you people?
Danny accuses the team of being
murder tourists. You make me sick.
Great line delivery there. Danny threatens them with arrest, which is subtle foreshadowing, and tells them to leave. He seems very serious and aggressive in this episode, which fits with his lack of knowledge of the full details of the incident at the house. Of course, Connor has to open his mouth again.
Do you know what? Can I just say that I think the police do a fantastic job? And you know, the occasional lapse into cliché is completely understandable in the circumstances.
You can see his face twitching here, seething with rage. We also get a glimpse of a young girl in a red jacket here. This is another horror movie trope of a child with the red jacket. Spooky. Abby, stay. Good dog.
Connor, coming with me!
Why does Connor need to go with you, Jenny? Connor and Jenny leave to find out more information about the house, whilst Abby stays behind to watch over the house. The girl also hides behind a tree for some reason.
Helen sits conspicuously outside the Ark in her car. How she keeps getting these cars is another question. She instructs one of her clones to sneak into the Ark for reasons as of yet unknown. We also hear the track Contaminated here. The clone chinfiltrates the Ark with Sarah's stolen pass, which raises no red flags for anyone, presumably. Once inside, the clone searches around for something, with the camera feeding back to Helen so she can see what it sees. Very clever. Poor editing here shows the clone walking one way down the hallway, only to immediately cut to showing it walking back the other way. The clone then just stares at Cutter ominously, while Helen can't contain her joy. At this point, is it safe to assume that she gets off on messing with the team? In this one shot of the clone, we get to see right down the set's hallway. Normally the doors are closed right behind the clone, so this is the only time you get to see all of the hallway. Seeing the clone wielding a blade-like tool, the viewer could misinterpret seeing Cutter lying on the floor as having been stabbed by the clone.
No one gets in without a pass.
Come on, Becca, it's not like you don't know who I am.
This is funny to think that Becca takes security so seriously that had Sarah genuinely lost her pass card, that he just wouldn't let her in.
On-time percentage, 12%.
According to this, Dr. Page entered the building a quarter of an hour ago.
The look of surprise and panic on his face here as Becca spurs into action is great. We then hear the next time trailer theme playing, but the version from when Cutter realises about the camp from Series 1 Episode 6. Cutter wakes from his thoughts, snooze, whatever it is he's doing, as the intruder alarm is raised. It's Nick Cutter. Note that these lockers, and the locker room itself, are different to the Series 2 lockers, as Cutter's full name used to be on the locker, not just the initials. Becca copies the clone by running up and down the hallway with choppy editing. He then finds the chinfiltrator awfully fast, who is in the process of stealing Cutter's shirt.
I need your shirt.
The clone then tries to pull a gun on Becca, but he is too well trained, and Cutter comes in to see the cause of the disturbance, and spots a familiar face.
I know this man.
I know you. Hopefully Cutter won't remember him.
To remind the viewer what aired a year ago, we get a flashback from Series 2 Episode 5 of Cleaner Prime getting killed by a Silurian scorpion, with music from the track Taylor, which played in the same episode. You can also see Stephen and Taylor in the background. Note Becca is dual-wielding pistols here. Presumably Helen sees that Nick has spotted the clone. With her plans foiled, she decides another route of deception, which we'll see later. Danny and his boss Stanley practice shooting stationary objects. Both are crack shots. Danny is insistent on telling him about the activity regarding the house. His boss brushes it off as nothing though.
I haven't got time for this.
Well, make time, sir.
Danny questions the authority of his boss, showing that he is adamant on finding answers about the house.
Forget it, Danny. It's over.
Not for me.
This scene establishes that Danny has an emotional history with the house, which we'll find out later. According to James Moran, the senior officer is apparently named Stanley as a reference to horror director Stanley Kubrick. Back at the house, we get the exact same establishing shot as earlier, as you can see Abby yet again crossing the bridge. In actuality, she is on the swing on the veranda, which is another horror movie callback. A creepy girl in the red coat and wind chimes are back. From inside the house, we see the curtains move as something creeps up towards Abby, and we get a glimpse of the creature, but before anything happens, Abby leaves the swing and walks away, unknowingly evading the danger. She decides to go for a walk and sees the girl. Cutting to suburbia, Jenny and Connor get the backstory of the house from this real estate salesman, and get the name Ryan Mason. Also, the sign breaking here was probably unintentional.
We're lucky, aren't we, darling?
This is a short scene, but we get lovely banter and chemistry between Lucy Brown and Andrew, who for some reason barely interact within the show.
If you're interested, I can get you a killer deal now.
Not the most sensitive word choice there, considering what happened.
Abby walks back to the house again and notices movement in one of the upstairs windows, another horror movie trope. As she enters, we get a shot from between the banister rails, as if something is looking down on her, watching her, yet another horror trope. We slowly see Abby searching the house and she finds a room hidden by a mattress. Perhaps this was set up by the creature as its bedroom? Abby opens the curtains, which reveals the creature hiding on the wall behind her, poised to attack. Somehow she doesn't see or hear it until it scuttles away into the shadows. After hearing its illegible muttering, she gets spooked and leaves the hidden room. It's cool to see the mattress being pushed aside as the creature pursues her though. Abby turns at the top of the stairs as the creature announces itself and jump scares her, causing her stunt double to fall down the staircase and get knocked out. It's lucky she didn't break her neck. Intercut with Abby's scenes, we see Ryan Mason running a carousel merry-go-round. What a career choice. It appears that he's using a different name, perhaps to disguise himself so that nobody knows he's the boy from the house 14 years ago. You can see this when he tries to run away when Jenny calls his name. Connor meanwhile was just being his usual goofy self and riding one of the carousel horses.
You ain't paid.
It takes both Connor and Jenny to convince Ryan to speak out about the incident in the house all those years ago.
It must have driven you crazy all these years, knowing that people thought you were a killer, when you'd done nothing wrong.
Ryan opens up and mentions and recaps the pre-title sequence. He also references a strange light, a name that many civilians call the Anomalies. We then get an extension of the earlier scene as teenage Ryan throws soot from the fireplace in the creature's face to make his escape. Ryan mentions that he wants to return to the house someday. This is the third character within the space of 5 minutes who's indicated they want to go into the house. Ugh. At the house, it seems the creature didn't savage Abby whilst knocked out. Unlike every other person it's encountered, we love plot armor. Connor and Jenny enter the house again and find her amnesic Abby on the staircase who can't remember exactly what happened. Because of this, no one takes any action because technically no one has seen the creature yet, despite all the signs indicating there clearly is one. Jenny takes Abby to get checked up and leaves Connor at the house this time.
This creature is never named in the episode, but instead only referred to as the camouflage beast or camo beast in outside material. Its design is supposedly based on the eye, a bizarre species of lemur, and so is appropriately weird looking. Despite the eye having a shaggy coat, this thing seems to have next to no hair like a human, with spikes? I suppose they could be quills like those of a porcupine, but what an odd feature to include. Its face looks somewhat like that of a sphinx cat. It's very rare for a mammal to be shrink-wrapped, as the skull is very prevalent through the skin. It seems to be if a lemur were to become more like an ape. This is reflected by its upright posture, lack of a tail, flatter face, and seeming to be fairly intelligent. Its hands are somewhat like that of the eye. The original design had very long fingers, but they seem to be shortened in the episode with longer claws. It also has theropod dinosaur feet. No mammal has feet like this, so it's an odd choice. The camo beast looks and acts like Gollum from Lord of the Rings, and even sounds the same sometimes, perhaps even having its own language, similar to black speech. I wonder what Andy Serkis would have to say about that. It's possible this creature inspired the myth of gremlins, as it bears a strong resemblance to the titular gremlins from the film by Steven Spielberg.
So, what the hell are you?
Its most distinct quality is of course its ability to change colour.
It can camouflage!
Its natural, or default, coloration seems to be a light brown or beige. Assuming it is a mammal, none are able to change colour like this thing can. The colour changing concept may have been better suited to a reptile, perhaps a future chameleon, which, like the eye, are known from Madagascar. Its camouflage is really weird though, as sometimes it's like that of chameleons, whereas other times it just becomes semi-translucent or completely invisible, which, how is that even physically possible? We could question whether this beast is a man-made genetic mutation, given all its unnatural abilities.
Cuttlefish have chromatophores that allow the skin to change color.
The camo beast is very similar to the future predator, in that it's a fast, intelligent, and agile stealth predator with long, scrawny limbs, hump on the back, and better fits this description given by Helen.
It can camouflage itself in almost any environment.
In the original draft of the episode, the camo beast was supposed to be sensitive to sound. Again, this draws parallels with the future predator. You can somewhat see the sound sensitivity in the final cut, with Emily leading the camo beast away with her bike bell. This would make sense with it having such big ears.
Back at the Ark, Cutter brings Sarah and Becca up to date on Helen's shenanigans with the cleaner. We can speculate that only Cutter has knowledge of the cleaner, since he likely didn't mention him to anyone else.
But rather than share that with us, you shut us out. You'll never be a team.
Interestingly, Lester is absent from this scene and episode completely. He was actually in the first draft of the original script, but his only scene was giving military-esque dating advice to Connor.
You killed his brother, so he steals your show.
Becca and Sarah share a laugh. Kinda odd for the head of security to be so calm about this. Initially, anyway.
There's another option. Helen.
Cutter is convinced that Helen is involved, seeing how he mentions the cleaner was working for her in Series 2.
Well, so now she's brought him back from the dead. Well, she's scarier than I thought.
This is a revelation for not just the newer members of the team, but also for Cutter, as no one has actually seen the cleaner clones yet.
Rule number 1. If something inexplicable happens, Helen's usually behind it.
You should be more mindful of this rule in the next episode, Nick.
Trust me. She's back.
You may have noticed the lab's light board in the background with all the previously encountered creature graphics. These have all been updated and moved since Series 2 and are as follows. Top row left to right, Future Predator, Dodo Series 1 Episode 4, what looks like a Megatherium skeleton drawing, Arthropleura Series 1 Episode 2, bottom row left to right, Columbian Mammoth Series 2 Episode 6, Gorgonopsid Series 1 Episode 1 and 6, what seems to be a Silurian Scorpion X-Ray, Series 2, Episode 5 and 7, Pteranodon, Series 1, Episode 5, Hesperornis, Series 1, Episode 3, and lastly, just off screen, is the Dodo X-Ray from Series 1, Episode 4.
Connor is watching the house, and, spotting the girl again, attempts to be friendly.
Hi!
The girl, however, remains silent.
Okay.
Upon realising that he dropped his phone in the house when Abby mounted him, Connor heads back inside to retrieve it, ignoring the warning of the girl, who finally speaks.
No! You can't go inside!
At the same time, the creature, for some reason, decides to give the phone a big old swipe, sending it across the room. Maybe it's camera shy? The shot of it reflected in the phone screen is well done, though the phone appears to be digitally moved when it gets swiped, as you can see distortion on the floor. Connor only just makes it through the entrance when Danny Quinn explodes out of nowhere to arrest him for breaking and entering, presumably. He must have been hiding very close to be able to do this so quickly. Perhaps Emily was trying to warn Connor about Danny this whole time? I wonder if Connor had told Danny the truth here if he would have listened. As he leaves the house, you can see he's got cable ties around his wrists, but in the earlier shot you can definitely hear handcuffs being put on by Danny. Connor is then taken to the police station and locked up.
You were warned.
Also, did Connor ever get his phone back?
Put me in the brig! I don't mind!
Never let a good commission go without a fight.
Jimmy, the real estate salesman, arrives at the house, presumably to tidy it up for selling, and... oh geez, that's terrifying.
I demand habeas corpus!
He might not know, but thanks to Google, we know it means protection against unlawful imprisonment without charges.
I know my rights!
Name them.
This is great physical acting by Andrew Lee Potts. You can see just how much anguish there is, then glee that he is portraying, even through this tiny porthole. Connor's goofy theme from Series 2 plays here as well.
Phone call! Come on, I get a phone call.
Good lad.
At least he thinks of this.
And the right to remain silent.
Well, you've lost that one, haven't you?
Connor couldn't remain silent even if he tried.
You tell me what you were doing at that house with your pals.
Danny seems very determined to find out about this house. How far is he willing to go? It's also funny the way he essentially shuts Connor up by closing the porthole cover. In the first draft of this episode, Connor was supposed to be back at the Ark, so who was supposed to be arrested?
You were warned.
Yep, Professor Cutter himself was supposed to be jailed by Danny, or Emmett. Imagine the interactions between these two.
You tell me what you were doing at that house with your pals.
I'm from the James Lester Animal Foundation. You've probably heard of us. No.
I know you're not a property developer, so what?
Later on, I'll explain everything I know to you, but right now I've got work to do, and if you can't handle it, you best go back downstairs right now. Please.
No, open the door! Open it!
Meanwhile, Jenny and Abby were off singing karaoke. Not quite sure how the timing of all this matches up with the investigation of the house though. This clip of Jenny driving back to the house is reused from earlier. Prehistoric Park would be proud of the amount of reused footage in this episode. Connor must have managed to convince Danny about the phone call, and calls Jenny to inform her of his incarceration. Upon hearing this, Jenny heads off to liberate poor Connor, leaving Abby alone at the house. Again.
Give him my love.
Oh my.
We get a montage sequence of various things that have been established throughout the episode. The house, Cutter and his matrix, and Connor in jail. The music here also gives off mysterious vibes. It's hard to spot, but if you turn up the brightness, you can actually see a mysterious man lurking inside the house on the left. It kinda looks like Matt Anderson. Presumably it's a member of the crew though. The bathtub and the curtain shot is a setup for later, and Cutter's clip is just unused footage from earlier since Connor is clearly in the background. Abby is waiting in the Hilux at night, jamming to some funky music. She spots the little girl Emily feeding the beast. Again, creepy girl befriending the monster is another horror reference.
I feed it so it doesn't eat Alfie or the other pets.
This is kinda dark that local pets have been eaten by the camo beast for 14 years, and the fact that Emily knows about this at such a young age implies she must have had pets eaten by it.
Don't go in there.
Don't worry. I won't.
Liar!
Jenny arranges for Connor's release from jail, who compares himself to Nelson Mandela, a man who was wrongly imprisoned for 27 years. Danny catches the pair in the act, though even when put in his place by the Home Secretary, he still feels compelled to threaten Jenny.
Do you think I'm entitled to compensation?
We see Jenny flexing her PR/governmental skills, something the writer wanted to include in his episode, which we appreciate as we rarely get to see her skills in action.
Leave it to the professionals.
Let the experts do their job.
Slight chronology error here, as it was nighttime/early hours of the morning, but when Jenny and Connor exit the police station, it is daylight already. Finally, at 33 minutes into the episode, does the team actually confirm the creature incursion. Finally, Becca and the Special Forces are called to help. Weird that the Primeval theme is being used here for such a minor scene. A lot of Series 3 seems to use past tracks poorly.
Despite being told to stay out of the house by 2 people now, Abby's hand is forced when Ryan's lousy timing invites himself into the house. Almost immediately, the Camo Beast decides to lurk behind her, unable to attack due to the plot armor. Whilst trying to escape with Ryan, the editing makes it seem like the Camo Beast is actually invisible, as doors slam and objects are thrown by nothing visible. I imagine this was done to save on animation, but it makes it really confusing to figure out how exactly its camouflage is supposed to work, as it seems to almost become truly invisible rather than blending in. In this scene of the Camo Beast jumping, it seems semi-translucent as you can see colours behind it. Jenny and Connor arrive and they all go to the bathroom, the closed curtains giving red flags because we specifically saw them open before. Whew, it's only Jimmy, the real estate guy. Hopefully he stays calm and doesn't make any noise. I guess that Jimmy got that killer deal after all. Unfortunate timing for Ryan, as Danny finds him standing over the body and reveals why he is so aggressive about the house. One of the missing boys at the start was his brother, Patrick.
Shut up!
Shot fired! Shot fired! Did he just discharge a police weapon? Ooh, the Camo Beast looks overscaled here, and oh, what the f***? Why is it red? And sideways jaw? Ooh, and black eyes. Ooh! Danny is clawed by the Camo Beast, which is similar to how the Gremlins attack people. Given that Danny was meant to be a one-off character in the original draft, it's possible he was going to die here. As the beastie turns invisible again, The anomaly reopens, this time downstairs, unlike 14 years ago when it was upstairs. What are the chances that it reopened on the exact day they just so happened to investigate? The camo beast stares into the anomaly, as if it's remembering and mesmerised by it before the team interrupts it. We'll let Abby describe the next part.
It's been waiting years for the anomaly to reappear.
In this shot of Connor and the anomaly, the camo beast is seemingly missing, unless it's invisible again. The currently visible beast screams at them before running back through the anomaly, and with all that talk of it being good and misunderstood, it then decides to come back and attack anyway. I guess it did have its own place and was fed every night. That or this is another individual of its species. After all these years of watching the house, Danny finally avenges his missing brother.
Anti-stab vest. Standard police issue.
It's not as bad as I thought. They've just strafed you with their claws.
I have so got to get one of them.
Watch as none of the characters ever do this.
I suppose an explanation's out of the question.
Totally.
Then Jenny seemingly explains to him anyway, off screen.
Becca's solution is to barricade the house with wooden panels. Love how for the Mercreature anomaly, Lester suggested covering the site with tons of concrete, yet Becca takes a page out of head parkkeeper Bob's book, where wood is the ultimate material for containing dangerous animals.
Can you get a 10-foot pole down the bottom of the paddock?
Thankfully, Danny wasn't killed, so he could apologise for harassing Ryan. Either way, Ryan's not too thrilled about the situation. Abby goes to see Emily, who is now acting more like a normal child, since the burden of caring for a monster is off her little shoulders. Does she know they murdered her monster friend?
They never found my brother's body.
This is a setup for the original Series 4 plot, which was somewhat adapted into the Series 4 we got.
Maybe it's time just to let him go.
After being on the phone with the man, Connor then quotes one of our favourite clips about Cutter.
Of course I was right.
It's great how Jenny laughs at this, as it's so accurate. Back at the police station, Danny gives his resignation to his boss, indicating he's looking to change career paths. This is also evident because of his lack of uniform. Danny Quinn, more like Danny quits. That evening, we see the Cutter family home. It's interesting to speculate whether this is the same location in universe as what's seen in Series 1 Episode 6, as that was in the original timeline. Nick is out, likely still returning from his Matrix predicting magic at the Ark. Suddenly there comes a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at his chamber door. Helen is being very sneaky this episode. First the identity theft, then infiltration, now breaking and entering, though technically she does still live here I guess. Lucky Danny isn't around to arrest her. Helen enters Nick's house and begins searching for something. Like the cleaner clone did earlier, she is looking for some hair and DNA, for as of yet, unknown reasons. Nick meanwhile arrives home earlier than Helen expected, then seemingly forgets something and returns the way he came. Helen is caught between Nick and the door before this happens though. There's a somewhat tense scene as Helen waits in the dark of the next room in a great shot with both Cutters side by side. Helen also wields a chain as a garrote, which if you didn't know is a method of killing someone by choking them. This implies Helen was considering lethal action if her husband had found her. Damn, that's dark, and further sets up her actions and behaviours in the next episode. Nick comes back, but then hears movement and goes to check the front door, which has miraculously opened. Helen, of course, has made her exit. Closing the door, Nick just stands there befuddled, as the music rises in a sort of primeval melody before cutting to credits.
In closing, episode 2 takes place around 24 hours, with Cutter's epilogue happening another 12 hours after that, and it's only a short amount of time between this and the next episode. Join us next time for the breakdown of episode 3 of Primeval Series 3, but stay to the end of the credits for Alfred's breakdown of Primeval Evolved Week 2.
Week 2 of Primeval Evolved was released 2 days after Episode 2, with the clue word being Ghost. Jenny arrives in your lab and introduces herself. She warns you to keep everything about the anomalies and creatures a secret. The interaction items are: in your emails, Jenny warns you about a journalist named Mick Harper, who has been sending emails to all of the staff and says you must tell him nothing about the Ark. Another email from Mick Harper asks you if you would be interested in giving him some information about your job. The microscope has magnetite underneath it. On the radio, there is a report about the death of estate agent Jimmy Keel, who died while trying to sell a haunted house, the same house where 14 years ago 3 boys disappeared. Abby's sketchbook has a profile on the camouflage beast. On Temple TV, Connor, due to his recent experiences in what he thought was a haunted house, ponders the existence of ghosts.
Recently, I was in a house and I could have sworn to you that it was haunted. But actually it turned out to be a...
In your intro, Becca tells you that because of Mick Harper's emails, there will be a review of the email security protocols. And on the voicemail, Sarah informs you that the Ark's cafeteria isn't very good and invites you to join her at another cafe. This week's game is Magnetised. Eve compliments you on your work and tells you about Connor's research before asking you for photos of Connor's lab, where he is researching magnetite. Once there, you play a game involving balancing magnetic fields of magnetite, after which you send the photos to Eve, who is worried about the consequences of the Ark being able to influence anomalies. That's all for this week on Primeval Evolved. We'll see you next week. This is Alfred, signing off.